Hey, this is Matthew Harvey here with the 12 o'clock siren, recording live at the 903 Broadband Studios at the Cowboy Corner on the southeast side of the downtown Leonard Square. On my left hand is James Epstein. Did not kill himself, Hartley.
It's true, he didn't. And it should have been James. Should have brought my rain gear, Hartley. It's starting to rain again. I don't like it. On my left, I got Jason Fuller.
I'm back, and I'm safe.
Welcome back. You doing good?
I'm doing okay.
You got a little fender bender rear ending?
I did. A little insurance seminar.
That's a tough way to end the week.
Insurance seminar.
We missed you last week, Jason, with
I know.
Coach Houston. Really wish you could have been here.
I hated to miss that.
It was possibly the worst timing of any episode.
That was very bad. What was it, an hour before the show?
Yeah, if that.
Man.
Yeah.
So we have a very special guest today.
Yeah, you want to do the honors?
Sure, I'd love to. This man was intended to be our very first guest, and at the time he was a little under the weather. We've rescheduled, and here he is today, Mr. R.C. Kuhn.
Mr. Kuhn, thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Welcome, sir.
So you just said right prior to the show that you were born right here on Fannin Street.
Right off. My wife was born 3 blocks up.
Oh, wow.
So as we said, it doesn't get much more born in Leonard than that.
No, you can.
And what year was that?
23.
1923.
So that makes you, if I'm not mistaken, you are the most senior man living in Leonard, Texas.
Yeah, and I think I could whip anybody older than me.
That's
Shots
probably
fired.
fair to say.
No, I like it. It's getting spicy
So,
already.
RC, what does RC stand for?
Raymond Clyde.
Raymond Clyde.
Raymond Clyde.
Tell us about your parents.
About my past.
Your parents.
Oh, my parents
Yeah.
are Evie and Claude Kuhn, and they was raised around here too, around Leonard. And both one of them passed away at 81 and the other in 87.
Goodness.
Had a wonderful life, and I had a wonderful parents.
Well, that's good to hear. Miss Evie was a Watson, correct?
Yes.
And my great-grandmother, Ruby, was also a Watson.
Oh, yes.
So
my mother and your mother were sisters.
Yes, my great-grandmother.
Very
That's
cool.
correct.
Little family connection here on the show. I like it.
Now, RC, how many siblings do you have?
I have 3 or 2. Two girls.
You were a family of 3 then?
Mm-hmm. My wife and 2 kids and me.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Very cool.
Did you have any brothers or sisters when you were growing up?
Oh, yes, I had 2 brothers and a sister.
Did they stay around here for their lives, or did they move on?
No, they were off at different places.
Gotcha. So what in 1923 you were born? What was it like? 'Cause so you grew up through the Depression here in Leonard. Then
I'll tell you about it. It is bad.
was it? So I've often wondered, was it as bad in Leonard as it was in other parts of the world or other parts of the country?
I think it's that way. All the farmers. I mean, on the farm, it was in that shape.
Yes, sir.
See, the banks busted in 29.
Yes, sir.
And that's when it hit. And if you had money in the bank, you lost the biggest part of it. Might have regained a little of it.
Goodness.
And my granddad, he had a little money and he lost it all.
Oh man.
And I was out there one day and my grandma said he went and bought him a brand new pistol, and he was going to go to Bonham and get his money back.
That's how serious it was.
And they talked him out of it.
Yeah. Well, there wasn't no money to get back, really, was
No,
there?
some of them, I think, later on got part of it.
Right.
And let me tell you another story. There's a farm right next to me now. In the early 20s, I think things was booming. Cotton was 75 cents a pound.
Sure.
And these farmers bought places. And my granddad bought a place out here in the country, and he gave $350 an acre for it. And he paid down $15,000. And when that hit, he lost it all. And later on, that land brought $35 an acre. Insurance companies and people that got it.
Jeez.
And there's a lot of this land brought, after that, $25 an acre.
And that's focused on the cotton crop.
Cotton crop.
Yeah.
And cotton wasn't bringing anything after this bust. I think 15 cents a pound. And, you know, most farmers didn't farm but about 50 acres. That's all they could work with a pair of mules. And you'd make maybe a third of a bale to the acre and get 15 cents a pound for the cotton.
Oh man,
Goodness.
Another little story. The mule traders we had a trades day here,
yes sir.
second Saturday, and it was great. And they'd bring mules in here. It's kind of a mule market. And they'd bring them in here to sell. And they'd come by. I live out here on the corner 2 miles. And they'd come by with one horse and have 7 or 8 tied head to tail and leading them. Come in 3 or 4 days before the trades day. And they stopped by the house and wanted to buy some corn to feed them one night. And my dad swapped them 2 bushel of corn and for a donkey for me.
For you?
For me.
Awesome.
And then later on, I asked Dad, I said, how much was that corn worth? He said 11 cents a bushel. And I said, how much is cotton? He said 15. Now, you think you had any money, maybe make 7 or 8 bale of cotton?
Goodness.
But nobody had any money. We raised 95% of what we eat,
Sure.
what we had.
So-
But everybody seemed to be happy with it. I didn't see, didn't nobody come by steal anything when you left the house.
Well, that's a different world than it is
This
now.
trades day was the trades day. What year was this?
Well, that was in the 30s,
Okay.
30s.
early 30s through middle 40s.
Where would that actually take place?
Right, where am I at? Right here south.
Okay.
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 Just behind the
South
square.
of these mini storage.
Okay.
All that was trade. And the train come by. And I'm not 100% sure, but I think these traders, mule buyers would come in here and buy them from all around. And they'd ship some of them out on train, but now I'm not sure on it. But I know they'd get somebody, they'd buy a buyer come in and buy 10 or 12. And we had a man here in Leonard, and he'd ride a horse and deliver them to Sulphur Springs or Greenville and come back.
Wow.
And he did that as long as I remember.
Goodness.
Were there other trades days around, like in Celeste, or was this kind of a hub?
Well, I didn't ever go to see Les probably,
Really?
but they wasn't, I don't think.
We try not to go down there either.
You had just
so-
gotten your transportation by that point, right? Your mule.
Yeah.
We didn't have any transportation. My family didn't till time they was married, and at the time I was born till 38.
Oh wow.
38.
No car.
What kind of car does that look like? Is that a
The one we got was a B model Ford.
wow?
Wow.
And let's see, there's something else I was going to say, but skip it.
That's okay. So your family they were farmers, but you guys
Yeah,
were
we-
also into horses too, right?
Well, later on, I rode a horse all my life.
Yes, sir.
Owned horses, and I'd have an old crippled horse worth about $5 that I'd ride to school if I went. You know, wouldn't go if it's cold or raining. That's the reason I don't have any education.
Well, we're happy you made it here today because it is raining outside.
Yeah.
So thank you very
Yeah.
much.
That different kind of transportation.
Yeah,
now.
I would imagine.
Well, so what was that kind of you talk about going to school and riding your horse to school? Was probably pretty common?
Oh,
Yeah, right.
yes. The first year I went to school out here, that was in 1930, and I walked to school 2 miles. I was in the first grade.
Wow.
And but before we'd get to town, they'd be houses, and we'd pick up some more. And time we got to school up here, they'd be 15 or 20 of us walking.
Oh, wow.
Just gain them as you get closer, I suppose.
If I sent my kids to school to walk 2 miles, they'd get, get lost.
yeah.
Well, it's funny because I rode a Mustang to school too.
Yeah.
A different kind of Mustang there, huh?
Yeah.
Did I tell you what my lunch consisted of?
No.
Yes, sir.
That's what I thought.
What was it?
It was either a biscuit and an egg, or a sausage, or crackers and peanut butter. And that lasted till I finished high school, 1940. And that's no lie.
Right.
We didn't. In 1939, they had a lunchroom, and you could, I think you could eat for a nickel a day, but I didn't have the nickel.
But before then, they didn't even have a lunchroom.
Oh, no.
You just
no,
brought it from home.
And no school buses to speak of. Maybe long in the late 30s, they'd stay on the dry roads, you know, and you could.
Sure.
But that is it.
Wow.
Did when you were going to school, did they have sports teams?
Sports.
Yes, sir.
Yes, they had sports about like they got now, and they'd have one coach for the girls and the boys and the football and the basketball and all that.
Gotcha.
I never did play sports.
Just wasn't what you were into, huh?
I couldn't. I had the asthma, and I couldn't run.
Well, I couldn't run either, so at least you had asthma to blame. I was just slow.
Yeah.
Now, looking back at growing up in the Depression era, James and I were talking the other day that maybe, and I know a lot of the population was pretty rural back then, but we were wondering whether the farmers had maybe an advantage being more self-sustained with, cattle and, cotton and being able to grow their own foods. If there was a better quality of life, maybe on a farm than some of the other peoples might have experienced.
Everybody was in about the same shape, and you couldn't. There's no jobs that you could get, when you got caught up with farming.
Mm-hmm.
And later on, when I was about 11, I know my dad and mother caught up, and they were hoeing cotton for a man, and he'd give them $1 a day for about 12 hours.
Oh my goodness!
And Dad wanted him to let me hoe. I was 11. And he said, yeah, if you give me 50 cents a day if I'd make a hand. And that's what I drew. In 1940, I finished high school. And the next week I came up here at town hunting me a job. And I got a job from Mr. Crawford down here, Crawford Motors.
Right across the street?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I lived 3 miles out in the country. And I had to walk up here. And he gave me a job for 50 cents a day. But I didn't have to work but about 9 hours.
There you go.
And
So you're making more money.
I was tickled to death with the job and proud to get it.
Absolutely.
What was that job?
Huh?
What was your job description? Or were you just helping around the shop or mechanic or?
Where was I working?
When you were with Crawford.
Yeah.
What were you doing?
I was working tearing down up my motors.
Okay.
He'd rebuild motors.
Small engine repair.
And my job was to tear them down. And at the end of a year, I had learned enough that I could work on my own car if I ever got one.
Yeah. Right. But that was coming. That was probably a long time coming.
That was coming pretty quick.
Yeah.
But in 1939, my dad worked for another farmer by the day for $21 a month. Figure that out a day. And then there was 5 of us in the family.
Goodness.
About 15 cents a day for each one of us to live on.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think times were bad.
Jeez.
But I never heard my mother and daddy complain much about it. And everybody seemed to be happy.
Right.
You'd get in a wagon and go somewhere, and you'd stop at 2 or 3 houses and talk to the neighbors.
Right.
And we lived out here, and my granddad lived south of Bailey, which is 8 or 9 miles.
Sure.
We get in a wagon, go over there some months on the weekend. He had a radio, and we didn't. We'd watch the Grand Ole Opry and come back home.
Mm.
So you during that time when things were hard though, people still got together. There was still a sense of community.
Yes, they did at times. If you did, you had to go in a wagon.
Right.
Now, there's some of the people a lot of them had automobiles, but we didn't.
Sure.
They was poor people, and we were the poor.
Right. Gotcha.
And that's the way it continued to be till, well, in 1935, the government came up with a little program, and it was called a CCC camp, and I can't tell you just what it stood for, but these boys would, after you got out of high school, just like going to the Army,
Right.
you could go and join that, and they'd come around to your farm that you owned it, build you a new fence, and all. You just furnish the material, and they'd build you a fence or cut out a fence or anything to improve the land.
Sure.
And then trying to think of another program they had there.
Was that the same type program that had the folks working like at the state parks, building the gazebos and the awnings?
Yeah, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And they lived in tents.
Mm-hmm.
They had set up a tent. I lived right out here. They did a lot of work for Mr. Davis here, and they'd set up tents and live in them.
Wow.
The boys get out of school, and they'd get $14 a month, and they sent home 7 of it, and they had the other.
Wow.
Happy to get it.
Sure.
It'd buy something then.
Oh yeah.
Kind of like job placement for after high school during hard times, I guess. Is that kind of what it was, like a traveling day labor sort of
Yeah.
camp?
I mean, yeah, that sounds. I forget the program's name. He called it. I'm gonna look it up.
I was going to look
here.
it up. I don't know where my phone went.
Just
Hey.
the only work to be found at the time, I'm sure.
Yeah. So for people that are not familiar where Mr. Kuhn lives, you live on the corner here by the high school, correct?
No, yeah, I was going to tell you about that.
Yeah.
I wanted just to let everybody know kind of where it was. You know, there's a big horse stable,
just-
rodeo type arena, and then you used to have a Sinclair sign outside.
I'll get into that.
I
in a
remember
minute.
that.
But in 1940, I guess it was, they got the WPA,
Yes, sir.
and that would hired people to do work, and they built this road from Leonard to Bailey, which is 78.
Mm-hmm.
And that was in the early 30s they started. They built it with mules.
Wow.
Imagine building that with mules.
Wow.
And another guy here my age, he told me his dad hauled rock from a rock pit out there in a Model A Ford truck. In the back of it, was about 4 feet long.
Sure. Yeah.
They hauled it in wagons.
And that was probably a big step forward
Oh,
at that time.
They were
and then
Yeah.
happy.
everybody wanted a job at the WPA. But now it was work. They'd haul that rock in there, huge rocks, lay you off a spot to beat up that day.
Right.
And if you didn't beat it, you didn't come back.
Oh wow.
The
Yeah.
rock?
The rock, and they beat
It's
it
like
all.
one big rock, and you'd have to smash it up.
You had to beat them all up so big. And they had a lot of men working on it.
Wow.
Wow.
Think about beating that up to Bailey.
Jeez. It's the second time I've heard that.
Yeah. Civilian Conservation Corps is what the
Oh,
Triple
okay.
C camp was.
Civilian.
Conservation Corps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh.
Right, in 1935 then, they came out with a program, and I can't tell you the name of it, but they'd kill cows. The government would come by killing cattle. They couldn't sell them. They wouldn't bring anything. Good milk cow would bring maybe $5, but there was surplus of them, and they came by, and they'd pay you $5 a head. And they came by right out there at Pike. I was out there. They drove about 25 head off in a low place. Just shot them, let them lay there.
That's government spending right
Government spending, I don't know what they called it, but
there. Yeah. Well, I tell you, it feels about like it's a return to those days as far as $5 a head. Cattle's not bringing much right now either. Maybe $1 a pound, I guess. I don't know.
I know I saved up $2 one time was hoeing that cotton, and I was going to buy me a calf from my granddad. He said, "Oh, son, I'll just sell you a cow." And he sold me a cow for $2.
Oh, man.
But he said they'd bring about 5.
Ah. So 1940 comes around, and it's starting to talk about, wars happening in Europe. What's it like around here at that time? A lot of worry?
Well, the people here, a big part of them, went to Dallas and everywhere, and they did all right. But the economy here, you couldn't see much of a change in it till about 50.
Really?
And then it began to improve a little.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Now, you found yourself in the service, is that correct?
Huh?
You found yourself in the service somewhere around that time.
Just a short time, and
Yep.
they kicked me out.
Well, that happens too. So 1950, you said that was when you saw the improvement. Was it noticeable?
It was with me.
Really?
It was with me. And let's see, in 1942, we moved out here the other side of town, and I went to work for a fella on the farm then. And I was 20 years old. And he gave me $1 a day. And worked, I got to work every day about it. And I stayed with that till I married. I married in 44. And I stayed with this man and had a little crop and worked for him then till off and on till the 50s.
Right.
In the 50s, things began to get a little better. And I bought me a tractor, rented me a place, and I paid down about half of it. Didn't cost a whole lot, and I made one bale of cotton off of 50 acres.
Really?
And I picked it. Went around and got a bale.
Do it yourself.
So I couldn't pay all that debt that week. And I went to the bank, and they didn't want to let me have it. So I went over to Bonham to, I can't call that government office, and they loaned me the money. And I paid it off. And I went to doing a little better then.
Sure.
Then I went to raising some cattle and riding horses more. I rode horses all my life.
Yes, sir.
But I went to training horses. And I'd training horses and doing all that, and I was doing pretty good. And then, let's see it. We had 2 girls raised in between 47 and 52. My wife stayed at home mother. She didn't work. And after they got old enough to not grown, but old enough to leave them, she went and got her beautician license, and we both went to doing better.
Sure.
I was training horses. In 19 and farming too. I was farming a couple of 100 acres and riding horses. 1963. I decided I was through farming. I never did make any money.
Sure, yeah.
So I going to ride horses full time. And I come over here, and I never had a carpenter. I hadn't done anything, and I built this barn. You see it up here.
Yes, sir.
I built that barn and went to riding horses. And times did get better.
Right.
Yeah.
I've rode a lot of horses for people out of several states, and had good luck with them.
Is this when you started with the cutting horses?
Yeah, cutting horses.
Yes, sir.
And the doctor brought me one, let me start it. It was a pretty good horse, and I went to riding horses for him. And in '65, I won 3rd in the world on the cutting horses.
Oh, wow.
And did pretty well.
Things definitely got better then, huh?
It definitely got better. But both of my girls were raised on the farm, and they'll come in there and tell me, I don't know how many times, Dad, you raised us in the best place, in the best time. They always had animals to feed on the bottle.
Right.
They'd come in from school and pull off their clothes and go get their horses.
No.
And then I'd take them to play days and all that. But they still tell me every year, Dad, we enjoyed the way we came out.
Cool.
So raising the horses, then you obviously had a knack for it. Did you come by that from somewhere? Did your dad teach you?
No, my dad, we didn't have the money to keep a horse. I said, I a lot of times had one that cost $5. But
Right.
When I got out of school, I bought me a horse. Cheap, nothing much. Went to riding them and just did well with them.
Just figured it out.
Well, you said you got a tractor in the early 50s, right?
I got it in 50.
So that means you were working with a mule at least a lot.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
So you must have been pretty good with a mule at least, just to get the kind of...
Not really.
Okay.
Most of the time I was on the farm, I was a hoeing cottoners.
Okay.
Right.
But I did stay with my grandmother one year and farm, and I drove mules and plowed.
I'm guessing there's big differences in training mules and training horses.
I'm sure there is,
horses.
but you're still having to deal with the animal all the time, whether
Yeah.
you're just keeping it, feeding it, or trying to get it to
Yeah, I
walk a
kind of
straight
had
line.
to act with it. I always had some dogs that just do about anything.
There you go.
What kind of dogs do you have?
That border collies, I don't have but one now.
Yes, sir.
My wife left a little dog, and I've still got it. It's 15 years old.
Oh, wow. Wow.
But,
Well, in 1950s, you said you bought a couple cows and
yeah, and I started renting a little land around the country. I could get it for $1 an acre,
Oh man.
but it wouldn't have any water on it. There wasn't any ponds. Wasn't any ponds around that.
Sure.
And one year there, I didn't have about 20, and They all went dry, and I had to sell them.
Oh man.
Start over again.
Well, is that when? Because for forever this was cotton country, and there wasn't much ranching done.
No.
When did ranching start kind of come in?
Well, I don't remember. It was up in the late 30s, I'd say, just a little. I know a guy out here in the country, he bought some Hereford cows.
Yes, sir.
And they came in on the train, and the Cowboys came with them, and they drove from town here out to Taylorville to the pasture. And that was the first, beef cattle that I ever seen around here. And I did work there. And during all this, I worked for Mr. Evans out here. He had a ranch, and I seen after that, but I liked that because I could take my horses and work them on the cattle and all.
Sure.
I did that for 4 or 5 years after I moved up here riding horses. And I've spent my lifetime, and I never had to punch a clock.
That's not a bad way to be
way to live
right
it.
there.
One time there was a doctor came by there, and he liked horses, and he liked me. And I told him, I said, Doc, I should go get me a job somewhere. He said, are you paying your bills? I said, yes. Are you happy? Yeah, you better stay here.
Yeah.
Had another one-legged friend here. He was a cow trader, and he was a philosopher. And I'm married, and I never will forget it. I told him, I said, I don't know how I'm going to make a living. He said, don't worry about making a living. Live on what you make. And that has bared with me till this day.
I've never heard that, and I like that.
Good advice.
That's the reason I never have borrowed any money, and the reason I haven't got a whole lot.
Yeah.
Hey, no, but you
But
don't
I
have a
ha-
lot of stress
But
either.
I have had a good life.
Yes, sir.
And I could sit here all day and remember stuff, but I don't think about it. But
Well, another question we wanted to ask you was about riding in the parade.
I've rode in the parades, I think, since the first, and I don't know.
So you rode right up until
Now you were riding horses up until just a couple of years ago,
I
correct?
rode them till my wife got so bad I had to stay at another's in '92. But I was still breaking horses for other people.
Yeah.
At 85.
Oh wow.
Goodness.
Goodness, yeah.
I see these guys hobbling around and complaining. I said, hell, I was riding horses.
So is that the secret to your success?
Just keep riding.
Stay
It
active.
is.
Stay in the saddle.
Believe it or not, I think riding horses is the reason. I've rode horses all my life. And one day I was riding down the road, and an old man, a horse trader over at Bailey, come by. And he said, son, if you'll ride that horse every day, you'll live to be 100.
Mm.
And I said, yeah. He said, yeah,
All right.
you just ride it and you will. And
Turns out.
he lived to be about 95. He was a horse. And of all the people I've showed horses with, a lot of them, and 95% of them are dead.
Wow.
But they lived a long life.
Might be something to do. They use horses for therapy a lot too. It might have something to do with not clocking in and out every day.
It's
My great uncle lived to 95, and he attributed it to hot toddies every morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of whiskey here and there.
yeah.
It also opened up his alcoholism too.
It's true. That's for a different time.
I don't know.
I was going to tell you about this place right here. Did I tell you?
Oh, you mentioned it.
Yes.
We want to talk about that.
So
Well-
so we're on the square right now on the southeast corner.
Yeah, it was
for those of you-
with another building here. And this guy was in here, and he'd haul whiskey in here and sell it and gamble. And it was this south side there, you didn't want to come by here. I didn't think it's that bad, but there was a vacant lot right up here. Yeah,
Probably where the graphic is or
Mhm.
was.
yeah, in there by a grocery store. And Dad and I'd come over here pretty often on Saturday. And he always wanted to go down there, and there would be about 12 to 15 men in there and on that vacant lot with their pistols. And they'd pitch up rocks and shoot them.
Oh my goodness!
Wow.
After having a pint of whatever this man was selling, probably.
So
Yeah.
the guy in this building is selling he's selling booze or something like that, or is a little speakeasy of sorts.
It was a gambling den, wasn't it?
Huh?
It was a gambling den.
Oh, yeah, there's a gambling joint in that. And then right beside of it, there's a lady, I won't call her name. She had a place there, sold hamburgers and whiskey.
Oh.
And you could go in there and belly up to the bar and bring you one right there.
Wow. Now, were they playing cards in there too? Like
Not in this Hearst place.
Oh, in
She
her-
just sold
gotcha.
whiskey.
Gotcha.
What would be the game of the gamblers of the day? I know Faro was popular.
Yeah. Was it poker mostly that was being played over here, or was it Faro?
I never
or-
did know. I
Didn't
never
know.
did go in there, but I bought a little of it over there and at that other place.
Gotcha.
I had heard over the years that the south side of the Leonard Square was a place a lot of ladies would not be welcome or should go.
Oh, ladies wouldn't walk across that street.
Right.
And on a Saturday afternoon, I know you've been told this, by 3 o'clock in Saturday afternoon when the cars come in middle 30s and 40s, you couldn't get a parking space.
Really?
They'd have to be parked all down the street. They'd come park their car about the middle of the evening and stay till 10 that night, just visiting everybody. That's the only time you could, you knew anybody to visit.
Right. Right.
Some of them go to show. I never did have the money.
So at that time, is there a lot of visiting going on the square, just out in the open on the sidewalks? Or are you going into a restaurant or bar or
No,
the movies?
Sitting in the car.
Okay.
And I worked in that grocery store too on the weekend. And the people come in and buy their groceries Saturday afternoon, and they'd put them in a sack, set them over there beside the wall. If they bought meat, they'd take it back and put it in the cooler with a name on it. And about 10 o'clock, they'd start going home, and I'd have to go pick up them sacks and load them all.
Yeah.
It's oddly
I always had a little job like that, now, but
Sure.
not punching the clock.
very similar to our high school experience on the square.
Yeah, it was a
You
little
know?
bit like that.
I mean, obviously not the
Right.
same.
It was
but
very social.
we were sitting in our cars talking and socializing, and that was the center of our community anyway.
It was definitely the center of our community for sure. I wanted to ask. We were looking at some things here, and we wanted to get into your barbecue restaurant.
Now, okay, whenever in 1975, I was kind of tired of riding horses all the time, and I decided I'd go in the barbecue business. I had cooked a little, and I built this barn, and I started in that. And I was still showing cutting horses everywhere. I just opened 3 days a week.
Sure.
And I operated it 18 years then.
Wow.
And I quit it when I was 74. But after that, I got me a job on Cowboy, and I hadn't retired yet. I still do all my housework, yard work.
Wow.
Now you upset a lot of people when you closed down that barbecue place.
Yeah, I had a friend come in with me later, and we did all the catering in North Texas, in Oklahoma, a lot of it in Oklahoma, up Broken Bow and all in there. We had a great catering business, but I could still open 3 days a week. We had 2 trailers, my friend and I did, and we had a great business.
A lot of people raved about the sauce. Could you tell us what was so special about your barbecue sauce?
Well, I don't know. I just come up with it, and everybody liked it, and decided I'd put it in some stores. So I got the man up here on the river, had the Hell on the Red,
Yeah.
and we got him, the friend and I, and we got him to bottle it for us, and he did it all. And he went to cutting down on the ingredients a little. He delivered it all, and it is in 110 Safeway stores in Dallas.
Wow.
But it didn't work.
Mm.
We wasn't making enough off of it.
Right.
We thought if we could have done it ourselves, it went like it's supposed to be. it'd
Sure.
been all right. But
That shelf space. It's expensive to come by. You got to dominate that shelf.
Yeah, you would think 110 stores you'd be doing right on it, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's a shame. I would have liked to try some.
What
of
was the name of the sauce?
Circle K.
Okay.
Okay, so yep.
It just didn't. We had it in this store down here too. It done good in this store.
No, I bet. I bet. So why barbecue? Did you just like barbecue and you said, you know what? I'm going to cook.
Well, I just come up with it, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I try something else.
Yeah.
I've had 3 or 4 little businesses. And
Got a pretty good track record.
Yeah,
I've
I'd
had-
say so.
2 or 3 guys tell me you're the only guy I know did what you did all you wanted to all your life.
So right there where Circle K was, you also hosted some ranch rodeo type things, right?
Yeah, we had built that arena and had horse shows out there and play days and horse shows.
Sure.
Had some Grey Day horse shows there for about 5 years. Then it rained. Had it in April and it rained out 4 or 5. Now they just quit having.
Gotcha.
That's too bad. But so tell us about the Leonard picnic.
The Leonard picnic is for something to be talked about.
There we go.
That is the greatest thing around Leonard, or anyone. They'd come from everywhere. And you're familiar with the roads down there. On a night, you'd be parked all the way back up to 78,
Oh, wow.
all the parking lots and everything.
Mom.
And we'd come over here when I was young in a wagon of a Saturday afternoon, when I was real small, and stay until about sundown.
Mom.
And there was a few people would bring a wagon in there with a lantern on the tongue of that. And I don't know, one night they had a wreck right out here west of here. A T-model Ford hit that tongue and it killed a mule and a woman in the
man.
wreck.
Wow.
But people didn't want to miss that.
Sure.
What is the Leonard picnic like back then? I mean, we know it now as a carnival, and you know how it is today.
There was some rodeoing going on.
What
down there.
were the entertainment aspects?
The Leonard picnic, well, you talk about the rodeo. They had a tent down there, a small tent. And old man Jeff Lyons lived right out here on the highway. And he had an old Jersey bull. And he'd bring him down there.
Jersey.
And they'd ride that Jersey bull. But we built 3 more fellers and I built let me name them. It was a Fred Bunch and 2 Watson boys and Merle Lucas. We started a saddle club here, and we'd have a show down there that night. We would go down there on Sunday afternoon and Wednesday night, rope.
How long did that last?
Oh, years, I don't remember.
Like into the 90s?
Yes.
Yeah.
We started in 52.
Wow.
When we moved here in 1992, myself and my sister were into horses, and we'd come up here, and we were part of the saddle club and the play days out here at the park.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. So you were
Founding
starting,
member?
founding member of that, huh?
Oh, yes.
Very cool. And
I'd take my girls over. They each had a Shetland pony when they got 5 years old. Take them over, and the kids would ride. Just a family deal.
So each July when the picnic would come around, you guys would ride in the parade, and then you might also find yourself on some trail rides.
I never did go on trails ride, but I always made the parade. My girls would come and ride in it.
That's really neat.
that must mean a lot to you that you were announced as the Grand Marshal of last year's parade.
Yeah, I don't know how I got that.
We were kind of
That's really
joking. They give you the key to the city, and we were wondering what that unlocks.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I've got it laying out there.
Hadn't
Probably
found
the
out.
electricity box out of the park.
Yeah, maybe.
Pretty heavy key.
It don't work the bank door or nothing like that.
No, not that I know of.
Well, that's pretty neat. And part of the reason we started doing this podcast was what we heard you as the Grand Marshal of the picnic, and we knew you had a lot of stories and a lot of experience here in town. We thought it'd be cool to get you on here and just pick your brain and have you talk about some of your experiences. So that was kind of the inspiration for a lot of the format of this podcast. Was talking to folks like yourself. And that's we had reached out to Phyllis early on to try to get you on, and it didn't work out at the time, but we're very happy we got you in. So that's exactly what we were going for on this.
Yeah, a lot of Leonard folk are gonna listen. They've listened to before. We've had other guys, Eugene Keggins and Eddie Sutherth and people like that. But if you could tell us some of your Leonard kinfolk, if you could name some family names that people would
Mine?
recognize. Yes, sir.
Well, everybody's familiar with the Watson boys out here.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
They're my first cousins. Their mother, their daddy and my mother were brother and sisters.
Gotcha.
And then my grandmother lived up there on the road for years and years, and I'd come visit her. But my granddad died early in life, and I can't tell you much more about that.
Well, you told us before the show that your wife Betty was a Flanagan.
Yeah, I can tell you about my wife.
Yeah.
She was a Flanagan, and her daddy died when she was 5,
Oh, wow.
and they lived here in town. And that's during that depression was so bad. And she worked everywhere on soup lines and everything, cooking for people to try to make them a living. And it was something else. And my wife told me when she's going to school up here, at lunch she'd walk from grammar school, it was down up here, and she'd walk home and there wouldn't be a bite in the cabinet or anywhere. And said I'd cry all the way back to school and then I'd get all right.
Oh,
Jeez.
That's the kind of life we live, or she lived.
It was hard times then.
that's tough.
Well, how did she have your wife? Did she have siblings? Did she have brothers and sisters?
Oh, yes, my wife had 2 brothers and a sister.
2 brothers.
And
a
they
sister.
both, when they was young, was working. One of them worked up the store and one of them worked at the cafe down there. They all had a little job trying to help out.
Sure. It was just a community effort back then, a true
Mhm.
family effort.
Yeah, my brother-in-law told me once that just before his daddy died, they'd bought a house right down, right up the street here. And he said they gave $400 for it. Said it's a good, and it's a nice house. And I asked him one day how they paid for it. He said they owed $200 on it, and the bread company
Jeez.
come in and paid it off.
The bread company.
Yeah, paid that house, and I never did figure why.
Wow, that's
But that boy, he never did have a life as a kid. He just worked in everywhere he could.
Bread company wasn't loafing around, were they?
no, but well, before we wrap up here, I want to ask you a question. As a man who trained horses, my dad was I'm the son of a cattle rancher and somebody who he loved horses. When you started figuring it out, what would your advice be to kids who are breaking horses these days? There's not as many of them as there were, but there's a few still out doing
My
it.
sister's one.
Yeah.
Actually, she's currently breaking.
What was
horses.
you what?
What would your advice be to people who are breaking horses?
Well, not break them like I started. I break them by being rough with them, and later on in years, just be kind. You can get your video now and learn how to.
Sure. Well, did I always ask my dad this question, like if you had a young colt, and why not start then? And Dad said, well, you could. He said, but sometimes it takes the spirit out of them. If they grow up just broke, he said, I like to get a little age on them before because it seemed like they were more spirited.
Well, I always broke my colts from 18 months on.
Right.
And not crowd them till they're 3-year-old.
Sure.
They used to have a 3-year-old fraternity in Dallas every year, and I put some horses in that. But I made the first go several times, but I never did make the last.
Well, yeah.
Training cutting horses? That's something you're probably actively using on the ranch, right? I mean,
No.
no?
It just yeah, like you use them, but you just cut a calf out of a herd.
Yeah.
And hold him out.
Are you learning how to do that by being on the farm and doing it yourself, and then you just kind of get into the competition side of that? Yeah.
What are some qualities you might look for in a horse if you were
Feet's the first thing. It's feet.
feet?
If you hadn't got a good foot, you hadn't got a good horse.
There you go.
Big foot or a solid foot?
And I've seen that happen a lot. I've always looked at their feet.
Now you mentioned your dogs too. Did you train your own dogs? You buy
Oh, yeah.
dogs?
Yes. I had Border Collies turn back for me working and cutting horses. He work them across there and hold them for me.
You get them from a pup and train them up yourself?
Hmm.
What would you look for in a pup to know if he was going to be good or not?
Well, those border collies is just naturally. If I was looking for a pup, first thing I'd do is go out there and sit down right around them and see which one came to me. And that might be the one I picked.
There you go.
So, what do your days look like today?
What am I
You
doing?
said you're still riding horses?
Oh, no.
No,
No, okay.
I quit when I was 92.
What are you doing nowadays?
Oh, raking up leaves, taking my dog riding, sitting in the house.
Yeah.
Enjoying retirement.
No, I don't enjoy being in there. I've never
Uh-oh.
stayed in the house in my life. I just get depressed real bad. My girls come to see me every 2 weeks and take me out to eat.
Oh, yeah. Where do you like to go eat?
Oh, we go to Sherman somewhere and eat fish,
Yeah.
different places.
Yeah.
But I have 2 wonderful daughters. Both of them raised up in the farm.
No.
Both of them got good husbands, good son-in-laws.
Good. One question we ask of all of our guests here is what your first memory of Leonard is. And I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you can think of Leonard, the first time you really, maybe something that stands out. Or,
Well, one of them I told you about getting that coat, didn't I?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's it. We tied those mules up there and come down. Oh, that was a good drink.
that's probably a big day, huh?
Yeah.
Yes,
And
sir.
I don't remember a lot. Later on, when I was 20 years old, I want to tell you, my tonsils were bad. And I came over here, there's a doctor right up the street here. I forget his name now, and he looked in there and said, yeah, you got to have them. They had bothered me for years. Said, come over here Friday, and I'll take them out. Well, I was going to come over here. I just bought my car then. Dad said, I'll go over and drive you back. I said, no, I don't need anybody to drive me back. And I got over here, went in that office right up there. He laid me back and had a little deal, reached down there over him and snatched him and cut him off. Got up and I said, am I ready to go home? He said, no, you better stay about an hour, see if you're going to bleed. In about an hour, I wished I had my dad before I got home. I was sick, but
Yeah.
it cost me $25.
Oh, my
Wow.
goodness. Oh, my goodness. Well,
We never went to many doctors. Nobody went to the doctor.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And there wouldn't be any medication for you when you went, just some black drawers or
Right. Now it seems like there's a doctor's office on every corner, just about. Especially you get up into Sherman and McKinney and all that.
I laid on living a long time but not go to doctors.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I take one little tablet, half of a thyroid tablet.
Well, that's what I heard somebody say the other day that you'll live longer if you stay away from doctors.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know. So
And speaking of, you mentioned you have a birthday this Wednesday coming up.
Yeah, about 3 days.
That's same day as my birthday.
Happy
actually.
birthday to both of you
Is
guys.
that your
Absolutely.
birthday?
It's
Yes.
mine.
Yeah.
February the 12th. Is it
Yep.
the same day?
yes, sir.
Very cool.
So
well,
this is the part of the show, RC, where we ask all of our guests 5 random questions, and we pick them out of this jar right here. So James will ask you a couple, and I'll ask you a couple, and then we'll turn you loose.
let's start with what would your last meal be?
Like what?
Your
What
last
would your
meal.
last meal be? If you had one final meal, what's your favorite dish?
Well, I don't know. My appetite's not very good. I might eat a big steak.
The man after my own heart, right there.
What's your cut?
You like
what kind of
ribeye?
A T-bone.
T-bone.
I think there was
Best of
something-
both
Oh
worlds.
yeah.
But I don't have many of them.
T-bone's for the man who can't decide.
Most people in
That's right.
town call you T-bone. RC.
Yeah, that's what I went by.
Oh, yeah? Is that why they call you that? Because you love that T-bone?
No, that's what they say. I don't know.
Sounds like there might be a story
up,
behind that.
Up until, I'd say, 12, 15 years ago, that's all I was known by, T-bone.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm. I know a lot of people in town still call you that.
Yeah.
Alrighty, we got our next question here. What is your most dangerous experience that you've had? There's got to be something
I've
dangerous.
had so many
Probably getting thrown from some horses.
Horses stomped on, kicked, walked over, stomped. I wouldn't know which one was the worst. But that's it. I've drove a car all these years, and I've never had a fender bender, never had a ticket, never drew any insurance. And now I'll see some of my friends, well, I'd hate to get on the road and ride where you're at. Ride with you. I said, well, you ought to be me in the car. and I tell them, I say, when I learned to drive, my dad taught me how to drive. And he took me out there, and he said, now when you meet a car, you weave around here a little, and he'll get out of your way.
That's good. I think my dad may have told me that too.
Right. Okay, so next question here. Besides marrying your wife and besides having your children, what was your most proudest moment?
Proudest moment? I don't know. I really don't. I've had so many of them.
Sure.
I couldn't tell you.
Well, that's not a bad answer.
I wish I could say that.
Yeah, no, I can tell you my proudest moment.
But I will say one thing. Me and my family have had a great life. My wife grew up, she was we both conservative.
Oh, sure.
All of our life. Wouldn't buy what we wanted to eat because we'd done without so long. But she was a wonderful woman, and if we had any problems, it was me that caused them. I was off showing a horse somewhere, and she's home taking care of the girls.
Sure.
And I regret that.
Sure.
Right. Sure.
But I had to do it if I was in my business.
A successful family and longevity.
Yeah.
That sounds like the answer to that question.
Absolutely.
Alrighty. Next question here. Could you tell us the best and the worst jobs that you've ever had?
The worst job I ever had?
Yes, sir.
That one usually
I've
comes
never
first.
had a job that I...
Well, you've been lucky. You didn't have to punch a clock very much.
No, but I wasn't very proud of them at the time, hoeing cotton and all, but
Sure.
that was part of it, and I never did complain with it
Sure.
about it.
I'm sure that was tough.
But the best job that you had, what would that be?
Training horses.
Sure.
I was going to say barbecue.
Yeah.
I like to eat, though.
I do too.
I like to take a colt and see what I could do with it.
Yeah.
Sure.
I had one horse here that I could ride across the square here in the parade. It's a cutting horse. I could cut a chicken out and go out there in the pasture, get a chicken out and drive him and put him in a pen. Or I could work him on that.
Goodness.
And you can ask anybody here in Leonard if they ever seen me do it. But I never could get me a DVD of it.
Really?
That's impressive.
Wow.
That is impressive. So our final question for you, and this is a kind of a silly question. What's your favorite movie? Do you have a favorite movie?
Yeah, The Rounders.
Okay. All right. That's a good one.
Good one.
Because
That
it
is a-
reminded of me. I had a pickup just like that and got in trouble about like they did.
That's a quick answer.
Not that bad.
Sure. Well, Mr. Kuhn, we really appreciate your time. We have been looking forward to this interview for a long time, and we really appreciate just what you've done around Leonard and all the stories you've shared with us today. So
You can throw out what you don't want.
no, it's all going up. It's all going
we'll
up.
use it all. I know we speak for all of Leonard when we say that everybody around here thinks of you fondly, and we just really appreciate you coming on and telling us about yourself.
Well, I planned not to do it because I didn't know it was going to be this easy.
Oh,
yeah.
see?
That's what everybody
Well,
said.
you know what? I sent Miss Watson out there to kind of grease the wheels a little
Convince
bit.
you.
I hadn't slept in a month. They all want me to come down here, and I'd try to think.
Uh-oh. Well, you got notes there in your
It
shirt
was
pocket.
It was
looks
pretty
like.
simple, right? I mean,
Yeah, it would be great.
so I mean, if you want to do this, we would certainly love to have you back.
Love to have you
Yeah.
back.
And now that you're more comfortable with it, maybe you might be a little more eager to come back. So you're welcome anytime.
Anytime you want to come back, you let us know.
We really appreciate your time
I
and sharing some
appreciate
stories.
you doing this for me.
You
Yes,
bet.
sir.
Mr. R.C. Kuhn, thank you very much, sir.
All right.